Hey, y'all. Today we are talking about what do I think are the barriers to inclusive education. Just some credentials. I am a special education teacher in North Carolina. I am special education K through 12. I have been in education since 2018. I have worked in resource, inclusion, and self-contained in general curriculum. I have not worked in extended standards self-contained classroom. I have worked in behavior self-contained classrooms, which still do general curriculum. The first, not really number one, but the first barrier I think there is to inclusive education is the resources available. When I say the resources available, I mean things like in North Carolina, the Department of Education here doesn't have a budget. It's been over 300 days without us having a budget. There are not enough teachers. There are more students than there ever was. The teachers who we do have are really good at their content area. If they're in elementary, really good at the content, but special education, there's not a lot of awareness, there's not a lot of teaching, there's not a lot of training, there's not a lot of PDs. Even as a special education teacher, a lot of the stuff that I know comes from not the district or the state training me, but other special education teachers who had already been doing it, teaching me how to do the stuff, right? So just the resources in all. We are not in the time where everyone who is labeled special education is going to be sent to a room in the corner, and all the typical on-pace children are going to be in the gen ed classroom. Get over that. That's not where we are. We are not in a place, or we are in a place where we have students grade levels behind who don't have a learning disability or who may only need accommodations like the 504 route, but they're just behind. I mean, we can blame COVID. We can blame students getting like No Child Left Behind, students getting passed on. We can blame all the hoops and barriers that are in place. It takes, in North Carolina, y'all, it takes a lot of work and data and justification to hold back a student who is EC, exceptional children. That's what they call special education here. So to hold back an EC student, it's a lot of work, a lot of justification, and it's not guaranteed. And so it's just that the kids don't learn when they're not in school. Some people think school is the only place you need to learn. We have children coming into school not knowing how to school and not had learned anything, not knowing the ABCs, your colors, your numbers, how to tie your shoe, what's your real name versus your nickname, like stuff like that. It's a plethora of barriers of resources that is in place. The second thing that I think is wrong, or second barrier I think to special education, is the idea that the special education teacher needs to be doing all of the special education stuff. We are in a time in education, we have been here for a while, in my opinion, where modification strategies, not accommodation, but modification strategies. So that is graphic organizers, guided notes, sentence stems, word wall definition, stuff like that we see in the IEP should be teacher standard, period, in my opinion. Those are not special ed things. Those should be teacher standard. When we're dealing with hard to stay focused, hyperactivity, those type of behaviors in the classroom, that is a teacher classroom management, not a special education thing, in my opinion. Even with me doing some of my IEPs this year, this is the first year that I'm at the school that I'm in. So the IEPs that I have, somebody else wrote them, and I hate that. I hate that. There are things like the modifications of assignments that I don't want to put on the IEP, because not only will it help this kid, it'll help every kid. But if I know that this specific kid benefits from that and that the teacher isn't already doing that, then I'm going to put it on there, because the IEP is something that follows the kid. So maybe the teacher does it in the classroom that they're in. Hey, y'all, in the editing cave. So, in this whole next part where I start talking about accommodations versus modifications, I say them backwards the whole entire time. A modification is changing the content. I'm changing the standard, the level that the student is learning. An accommodation is those added on strategies that help them with the given content and the given standards. I believe that modifications are for special ed teachers, but accommodations are for teachers. But what about the next year when they're looking at the the modifications again? If it's an accommodation and I need to modify the content, that's special education. Everything, in my opinion, except adjusting the reading level. I think gen ed teachers can adjust the reading level. But if I'm changing the content, that's a special education thing. Adding in strategy supports to help the student, I do not believe that that is a solely special education thing. I believe that all teachers can do that. And then the number one callback I get for that is like, well, I have 30 kids, or I have 120, 150 kids. Well, when I was in middle school, I had that many kids. In high school, I have that many kids. In elementary school, I have that many kids as well. And not only am I expected to teach the content, but I'm expected to modify and accommodate all of y'all content. And I'm expected to be their case manager at the same time. So yes, we all have a lot of kids. Putting modifications on your master copies, that is a strategy, and I'll put resources down in the description box to back up what I'm saying, with different research and points, so that I'm just not talking out of my experiences and out of thin air to back up what I'm saying. But the strategies help everybody. Now, we are not accommodating everybody because it's no longer an accommodation. Everybody don't get a different reading level. Everybody don't get the content changed, right? But if they need a graphic organizer or word bank, those are the type of things that can be added to the master copy of things in order to benefit every student. And if they use it, they use it. If they don't, they don't. But the notion of what is a special education thing and what is a general education thing, I think is 30 years behind where it needs to be. Just because they have ADHD does not mean they need to be in a separate setting. Just because they have Asperger's or ASD does not mean they need to be in a separate setting. Do I think there needs to be behavioral training for us on what are these students like? Where is it coming from? Finding the function and the antecedents and all of that. And then how do I classroom it? Yes, 100%. 110% there needs to be. Because right now, with how the money and the politics of teaching, that is just all these kids are just thrown into this one room. And based on how my schedule is, I might be able to get in there for 20 minutes because I still have every other kid in the school to get to. But physical, violent, aggressive behaviors aside, the busybody, the hyperactivity, the hard to stay focused, the fidgeting, the needing a fidget, needing a calm down cord, needing a break, those type of behaviors are not special education behaviors. Those are classroom management behaviors. And yeah, there can be training, should be training if you don't have it on, hey, how do I do this? I'm a teacher and I'm used to you doing what I say. Now I have to put in all these different strategies and I have to do things a different way and I don't know how. Yes, that's a problem with teaching, period. Like not just a barrier to inclusion, but teaching, period. And a kind of caveat off of that is there are so many students who have so much time, and there's either one or two special education teachers. Like when I was in middle school, there were two per grade. And it was a huge school. There's like 1,200 kids in that middle school. In the elementary school that I was at, there was two of us. I had the lower grades. The other lady had the higher grades. And now there's two of us, but now I have a TA. Like I'm in an inclusion setting and I have a TA. Oh my gosh. First time that's happened. But all of that to say, there is not enough of us to push in to everyone's class. Every kid don't need a co-teach push in. Okay? Every kid don't need it. But there's not enough of us and there's not enough time in the day for us to do that. I'm a big believer that if with my kids who have behavioral services on their IEPs, if you have the skill, I shouldn't be pulling you out of the classroom. You need to learn how to generalize and practice that skill that you already have. And that can only happen in the gen ed classroom because you can master it in my smaller setting, but then you go to the gen ed setting. So that's something I prefer to push in with. If I can, if I have the time. I have certain students where I push in a day or two. And then the other days when I'm not pushing in, like I'm something else is filling that time. If I have to give you direct instruction on these behavioral skills, then you need to be in here with me. My opinion. You need to be in here with me. But if you already have them and we need to generalize them, then that's something I prefer to push into. Is that something that I can always do? No. But that doesn't mean that now all of a sudden I think that they need specially designed instruction. They don't need specially designed instruction. This is what my data shows. So the behavior and stuff that they're seeing in the classroom, it's a classroom management thing because I have data to show that these are skills that they have. So the benefit of me being in the classroom, working with the teacher and doing that type of stuff is helping give the strategies to generalize those behaviors and give the power to the teacher in the classroom if they have the skills. And I'm not talking about physical aggression. Okay? If I have to teach them the skill or the skills that they need, I've had a couple of kids where it's just we have to start from scratch. This is what you do and this is what you don't do. Let's practice. You need to be in here with me. That's specially designed instruction that needs to come from a special education teacher that I can't give you in the general environment. And I'm not talking about physical aggression. So just wrapping up that section, I know I went on a couple of tangents. Sorry. A barrier to inclusion. The first thing I said was resources. And in this section, I can wrap it up as the out-of-date ideology and the lack of training on what is special education and what is general education. And where do we come together to collaborate? And one more, not my last one. I'm not going to get really into the teacher politics of things because I can rant and rave forever. The third barrier are the physically aggressive students. The students who are spitting and hitting and kicking and punching and knocking everything off the shelf and flipping tables and flipping desks. That's a barrier. Not only is that a safety issue for everybody around, there's no education, there's no instruction happening when there's behaviors happening. And that's with like the hyperactivity, the not on task, the talking to your friend, with that stuff. There's no instruction happening when that stuff is going on, let alone a physical violent outburst is happening. And it's the misconception of where I get it as a special education teacher. It's like, why are you letting him in here? Like, he's doing all this and you're allowing this to happen. He needs to just be, well, if I'm in an inclusion setting, guys, my environment is not an environment of where the physical aggression and all that stuff. It's like, this is not a behavior self-contained classroom. Like, I'm in the same boat as you. And like, just how a general education teacher gets told what to do, how to do, and when to do it, special ed gets the exact same thing, y'all, the exact same thing. But he needs to come with me because he's flipping tables and doing all this other type of stuff. Well, I'm in here teaching too. My environment is not a behavior self-contained or in an environment that can handle that extreme amount of physical aggression in inclusive co-teaching type of environment. So when a student is exhibiting those behaviors repeatedly to the point where it's impeding on their and others' ability to get instruction in academics, where are we going to do? And there's and it doesn't always equal Asperger's or ASD or something like that. It doesn't always equal. Like kids with autism and kids with Asperger's are not physically aggressive and violent. Like those two things do not go hand in hand. The physical aggression and the violence can be a symptom of them, their inability or the difficulty to regulate their emotions or the overstimulation.
Trying to cut out all of my pauses the best that I can. But some in these parts, I'm getting real fussy, and pausing is a teacher thing I do. When I fuss, I pause periodically in between what I'm saying to give the kid time to process what it is I said before I move on to the next part. And I'm doing that in here, and I'm trying to cut it out as best as possible. But sometimes the cuts look really stupid, so I'm leaving them in, so sorry.
However, replacement behaviors, coping skills, all of those things that can be put in place instead of physical aggression. And the kids who punch people and flipping out aren't always the kid who have a disability. Those two things also don't go hand in hand. But I acknowledge and I am with y'all on the fact that that is a barrier to inclusive education. I've said it before. I have an issue with, I have X amount of students and this many of them have an IEP or 504. So, are you telling me that you have X amount of students and this many of them who have a 504 and IEP, all of them are flipping tables and punching people? Because the percentage of them who are physically violent and aggressive, I'm with you. The general education is not the environment for them. That's not the correct placement. That's not where they and others can thrive, because it's not just them who matter. The class in a whole, all students matter. But if the kid's not physically violent or aggressive, and maybe it's like the hyperactivity, it's hard to focus, struggles like talk, like that stuff, that's classroom management stuff that irritates you, so they need to get put out, or they have it and they have modifications and accommodations and it changes the way you have to do stuff, so then they should get put out. That's the type of stuff that pisses me off. Because yeah, some of it is special ed stuff. But back to my second point, some of it is not. Some of it is general education stuff, and some of it is where we come together and where we collaborate. All of it that's not typical and on pacing is not pushed over here to the side for someone else to deal with. So to wrap that up, I could like rant and rave. I'm not going to go into politics, the politics of teaching. However, if you're a teacher, a parent, whoever, who doesn't believe me, doesn't think it's important, or overlooks the politics of teaching, you're part of the issue. Because just as regular politics, just how that is so important and it drives the way stuff moves, so does the politics of teaching. And then us teachers, the base level on the ground, we do what we're told. And I can either do what I'm told or I can get pushed to the side and someone else will come in who does what they're told. And so this dilemma that teachers are facing. So my 3 barriers that I'm choosing to highlight that I think are barriers to inclusion is the amount of resources, the special education versus general education ideology, and the physically violent and aggressive students.